Okay, so step 2 of this process is how do we put together a PHP script which will take information from that database and display it through a web browser as a web page effectively. Okay, so what I've done here is, firstly, I found these very nice free PHP tutorials on this site called Home and Learn, and I essentially borrowed a script from them and adapted it, rewrote it a little to my purposes. So I suggest you go and have a look at that stuff. It's pretty clear and useful. Okay, this is the PHP script that I ended up with. It's a pretty concise and standard bit of PHP code for accessing a database and digging something out of it. Now, I'm not going to go into the specifics of this code, but what I do want to do is I want to show you what's important with respect to the Black Knight hosting package in terms of how you go about getting PHP scripts to connect to databases. And this tends to differ from hosting package to hosting package, and it can be a real pain figuring out how to get this to work initially. Now, basically any connection between a PHP script and a database has to contain some kind of standard bits of information. The first one is a username. The second one is a password. The third one is the name of the actual database, and the fourth one is the name of the server. Now, the username that we supplied when we created the database, if you remember, was hmccabe. However, hmccabe is not the username you need to use to connect to the database. What you need to do is you need to take hmccabe and prefix it with this string of numbers here. Now, U obviously stands for user, and then there's a number 1258198. Where the hell does that come from, you may be asking? Well, if you remember, I'm going to pop back into my database here. It gave me this name for the database DB1258198 when it created it. That's like an automatically generated number of some kind. So that's your number that you need to use in front of the username as well. Okay, so that's the first thing. Second thing is the password that I used. Again, I just chose that myself, so that's going to be whatever you choose yourself as well. The third thing is the name of the database, and again, that's simply the name of the database that it generated. So it's not GamesITB, it's GamesITB preceded by this string, again, DB and the number. Okay. The fourth thing, and this is something that trips people up all the time, is the name of the server. Lots of documentation about PHP and about MySQL, and you'll find this in setup instructions for WordPress as well, for example, will say that the server is usually localhost in 99% of circumstances. In my experience, it's never localhost. It's always some hosting company specific server name. And luckily enough, it tells us what that is when we set up the database. In this case, it is here under internal hostname MySQL 1555int.cp.blackknight.com. So that becomes your server name. Okay, now once I had all that stuff right, well then it became straightforward enough to get the script to work. I had to edit it slightly to put in the names of the actual fields which are in my database. Let me zoom in there so maybe you can see that better. And they were, as you remember, author, title, year, and place. Now all this thing is going to do is it's just going to dig out as many rows as it can find within that database and then use this print function to output them to the web browser window. Okay, so this is called publications.php. I'm going to pop back into my GamesITB domain. I'm going to go to the file manager. I'm going to go into the GamesITB folder, and then I'm going to upload that publications.php file, which is on my desktop. So I just need to navigate over to that. GamesITB. Okay, it's called publications.php. Where is it? There it is. I'm going to choose that. Okay, upload it. And now what I should be able to do is get at that through typing in the relevant URL. Publications.php. Run it. Okay, great. It's dug out the names of the two publications that I made up and put into my database. Now, obviously that does not look as good as this. Where is it? Which was my original static web page. Not that this looks particularly good either, but obviously there's formatting here and colors and things in bold and so on. And it's also situated within a kind of a table structure here. But really, that's a matter of taking the PHP code which generates the stuff and fancying it up a bit by putting in HTML tags to put things in italics, to put things in bold and so on, and then embedding it within a table. So, you know, it's straightforward enough to turn this into this once you've got this working. Okay, so key things to take away from this are this is how you specify the username, the database, and the server within the Black Knight system.